now, and we're going to finish up our second half of the presentation. We'll be ending about 2 o'clock. I told we'll end about 10 minutes to 2. Then we'll do our drawing, okay? All right, so Dennis Dunbar on the glamour retouching secrets of the pros. And go ahead, take it away.
Okay, so we're getting back into this. I want to show you another image, but before we do get back into it, I just want to remind people, if you have any questions at all, please post your questions. I really try to make these things responsive to what people have. When we see the questions, I know if I'm getting through to people or if I'm glossing over something and you're not quite getting it. It really helps a lot, so that way I know how fast to go or if I need to go back over something again. So here's another image for this, and this is very similar workflow to what we did with this other one. This is one we were just working on, and if we come back to our history thing and come back to the beginning of it and click on layers, you see here we had our markup layer, and then we had the different layers we did. So we had the retouch. This was all the stuff that had to go out. Stray hairs. This is working on cleaning up some of the stray hairs. Under eyes, so we can clean that up. Cleaning the eyes. We had a curve adjustment layer just for affecting the eyes. So that's really pretty simple. I'm going to pull the properties over here so you can see it. It's just make a little mask for the eyes. Make an adjustment layer. Pull up a little bit just to brighten the eyes a little bit. Give it a little more life. One of my favorite color correction techniques is to use 2 curve adjustment layers, one set for color blending and one set for luminosity blending. And the advantage with that is a lot of people struggle with curves because it's a lot of stuff going on at one time. So what I mean by that is with curves, if I brighten up a whole lot, you see it shifts towards yellow. If I darken a whole lot, it shifts towards red. So just darkening the lighting means now I have to go in and I have to correct color. If I come over here and I add red to the image, now I'm also brightening the image. So I have to come over here to the RGB curve, and I have to darken it down to get to the same density I wanted, and I'm chasing my tail a lot. But if I turn these off and I make an adjustment layer set for color blending, and I set the blending mode to color. If I make her redder, I'm just making her redder. She's not actually getting brighter. If I pull red out, she's getting more cyan. I'm not actually changing the tonality of her. If we change the blending mode on this to luminosity, and we come over here to our RGB curve, now we're just making it brighter or darker. We're not getting the color shift. So by dividing these two things up, I'm going to clean these things up. By dividing these two things up, we have one curve layer here set for color blending. It's just warming her up a little bit, adjusting the color a little bit. And another one set for luminosity blending. It's just adding a little bit of contrast to it. So it's a pretty easy way of doing that. We can spend a whole lot of time talking on color correction. We have just about an hour left, so I don't want to get too much in the weeds of that. If you guys want me to go back over that, I have an image that is a little bit better for it. I can show you that one when we can circle around back to it. For now, I want to move over to here. And this is an image I worked on for a photographer. He's doing a series of images of celebrities whose lives have been touched in one way or another by people who have, I think, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, I think. So this is kind of an interesting thing, but it's a good example of just what a standard beauty retouching goes. So for this one, I noticed the partner hair was a little bit too strong, so I just made a clip of this, stretched it up a little bit, and blended it in with a layer mask. So that's just closing the hair part. And then it's the standard retouching thing I did before. Here's our retouch layer. Here's our line around the eyes. Now with this one, it's very low opacity is set for 30% opacity, but if we set this up to 100%, you see almost all the lines around the eyes here were taken out. Set the opacity back to 30%, and it's giving me just enough lightening of that so the lines around her eyes aren't really that pronounced. This particular client, he wanted them to look real. He didn't want it to look, like heavy-handed retouch, so I went with a lighter touch on it. But again, it's adjustable. Whatever way he wants to go, I can go. Stronger, lighter, whatever. We had a similar one for lines around the neck. Lines around the neck, this one is set for 60% opacity. So it's just smoothing that out, and that's done with a healing brush, going through and cleaning that out. And then I noticed the color on her cheeks was a little too red, a little too peachy. The makeup was a little heavy. So this is just a adjustment, a new layer set for color blending. And then I just took the brush tool and sampled some of this color and painted over there and slow the opacity down just to bring it closer into line. You want to be really careful with skin color. You don't want to make it look too uniform because as humans we have a lot of variation in the hues of our skin. Some parts were a little more yellow, some parts were a little redder, a little bluer. You want to have some variation in that, but not so much it looks out of place. So you just want to bring it in closer to line. Then the other thing I want to talk about, really want to spend some more time on, is burning and dodging. And burning and dodging is, if you want to do high-end skin work, that's really where the meat of the work comes in. The whole idea is after you've gone through and taken out the blemishes and the things like that, the surface of the skin, the way it catches light, the peaks and valleys on the skin are going to catch the light a little bit differently. And so depending on the way your light goes, it can really exaggerate the unevenness of the surface of the skin. And you want to use burning and dodging to try to bring that in closer together. There are a number of ways of doing burning and dodging. One way that people start off with a lot is just to use a burn and dodge layer for this. So what I mean by this is we're going to call it demo burn and dodge. And we're going to set the blending mode to overlay blending. Now with this we have a choice. We can fill it with 50% gray, which is neutral color for overlay blending. That means anything 50% gray will not show up. The way overlay blending mode works, the lighter it is, it's a contrast enhancing thing. So the lighter it is, the more it will affect the image. The darker it gets, the more it will affect the image, darkening and lightening the image. But 50% gray will be neutral. So something that is like 25% gray will lighten the image. Something 75% gray, almost black, will darken the image. You want to go that way. So you don't have to fill it with neutral color. Some people like to, some people don't. My preference is why fill it up and make extra pixels when I don't need to. But let's fill it with 50% gray anyway, just so a lot of people find it easier to imagine. So this is what that layer looks like right now. You look at just that layer, it just looks like this. So the trick with this is you're going to set your foreground colors, your foreground and background color to black and white. I find most people tend to need dodging work more than burning work, which lightening more of this stuff on the skin than when darkening it. So I always start off with the lighter part. I'm going to go to the brush tool. Here's where I'm going to set the opacity or the flow really low, like this. Like maybe let's try 8%. And we're going to zoom in and we're going to use a very small brush. This is where I'll use the bracket key to set the size of the brush. And they're just going to start striking in. Now as I start brushing in, I see the effects coming up really strongly. So I'm going to want to turn this down even more. Let's try setting this to like 0.2%. There we go. So we have this like 2%. So we can go back and forth, and there we go. That's about the right amount. So you have to be really, really super subtle. And you can, with this work, I'm zooming in and out at different levels. My first step will be to go zoom in at a close level, and then I'm just trying to even out all these little areas here and bring in just enough. I want to make sure my brush is set really soft. So I'm going to go back to a really small brush. And I'm just lightly brushing, going back and forth, trying to even these things out. So as I work my way up, I did this first with Dodge, with a curves thing, but you see the areas here where I'm working on this one. Just going through and lighting these things up. So that's going to be the kind of effect we do here. On our Dodge thing here, let's come over here and just let it go there. We're going to lighten this up a little bit. And it's just a process of working carefully with this. The thing you want to watch for when you go with a burn and dodge layer on overlay, it happens more when you're burning. So we're going to go to black and we're going to go really strong over here. What tends to happen is, just like the curve layers did, where it gets more saturated and redder shift, that's what tends to happen when you do this with the burn on an overlay layer. You get more of a color shift. So that's what you have to watch out for. You want to be really, really careful about that. But the burning dodge layer on overlay, this is basically just painting white and black, or you can sample a different color for this. It's just, if you want to darken the image, it's got to be darker than 50% gray. If you want to lighten the image, it's going to be lighter than 50% gray. And then the closer to white, the closer to black, the stronger the effect. I don't tend to use this method a whole lot for it, but this is kind of what the effect winds up looking like, where we're just painting these things in. So far, all we've done is just brush in some white paint for this. The next way that work a lot is to make burn and dodge curve layers. And this is the way I work the most often. So to do this, I'm going to make a curve adjustment layer. I'm going to call it dodge. And since I already have a dodge curves, I'm going to call it demo dodge, or demo dodge, dodge demo. And now we're going to come here and we're going to just pull up a little bit on our curve, just a little bit. Doesn't have to be a whole lot. The stronger you go, the stronger the effect will be. Now we're going to invert the adjustment the layer mask. We're going to click on that. We're going to do Command I to invert that, so it has no effect. And now we're going to come and we're going to make another one for burning. And this is set for normal blending. So we come here and we're going to pull down just a little bit. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. And we're going to come and we're going to invert the layer mask for this. So now dodge, we're going to come back over here to our brush tool. This is where I find for this tool a setting more like 20%, 10% tends to work. But as you start to brush, you're going to get the feel of it. Now our layer mask is black because that's going to hide the effect. So we're not going to paint black in this layer mask right now. We're going to switch and paint white into this layer mask. We're going to come through here and start painting in and lightening things in with the idea of blending. I'm going to go a little faster with this because, again, we just have maybe another 40, 50 minutes before we have to go to our thing. So I want to cover this idea pretty quickly. But this is what I'm working through here. Go through and just see the areas where it looks like the skin isn't quite the same surface. Now, when I went here, it was a little too strong, so I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to turn the flow of this down to like 10%, and then I'm going to be a little more careful blending in this area here, because I noticed it was going a little too strong. If, again, it looks a little too strong, I can switch to black. I can paint black in here. It makes it really easy. With this thing here, I would have to, with the overlay layer, I would either have to erase it, or I would have to go and set another color to 50% gray and paint over it. So it's a little harder to control that. I also find that if I separate it between the between lightening and darkening and different layers, it's easier for me to dial in and tweak the strength of it. Because if I go through and I find my dodging is a little bit too strong, I could just turn the opacity of the layer down or change the curve. If I find it was a little bit too weak, I can boost the curve a little bit. So it gives me a lot of control over that. If I had them all in one layer, it would be a little more difficult to control that separately. So as we go through, this is what I'd actually done with the dodge curves. If we look at if we look at just the layer mask for this, you can see what this is affected in here. So it's some very small, little precise brushes, some a little bit larger, softer brushing, some stuff where it's a light touch with the brushing, but a little bit larger brush for that. So this is what the effect of the burning and dodging is. And this curve is just a curve here where I just pulled up on it a little bit. It's not a whole lot, just a little bit. Now when I went to do the burning on this one, I used a slightly different variation on this. You'll notice this one has a hue saturation layer. It's called Burn HS. The different variation on this one is something I experiment with sometimes. A friend of mine, Carolyn Winslow, who has a retouching company here in LA called Portis Imaging. Really nice people. This was what she would do for burning. She sets up a hue saturation layer, and to counter this saturation increase, she pulls the saturation down about 40% in the hue saturation adjustment layer. Then she sets it to multiply blending. So multiply blending is going to darken the image by whatever's in the image. Black's going to have the strongest effect. White in the image is going to have the least effect for multiply blending. And to make sure that it's not too strong of an effect, she sets that to about 40%. Yeah, but the saturation, pulling saturation out will counter the saturation gain you're getting. So it's another idea that you can come in here and darken without getting a big color shift. So this is just looks like darker skin color, but it's not getting that darker red that we were getting before with the other stuff. For that, I find for the most part, very little parts on the skin need to be burned. So these are just a little touches on here. We look at the dodge. There's a lot of stuff on dodging, but with the burning, there is just a little bit of stuff on the burning that typically needs to be done for that. But that's what the technique is for these things. So these days I tend to use just the curves most. I don't use this hue saturation one very much anymore. But it's just a matter of going through with your brush tool. We're on our dodge curves, and we're just going to go through and watch these little areas, these dark areas here, blend in and disappear. You're trying to be watchful enough and a very light touch on your whacking thing. This is again where you having a stylus, some sort of a tablet like a Wacom tablet comes in really helpful. It's just moving your eye around and seeing whatever it looks like we're getting a little divots in the skin or whatever. Her skin's not too bad. So you can go a lot. You can also do a lot to lighten wrinkles on this. Now this again a little too strong, so the flow on here is 10%. So maybe we try 5% flow. Slightly larger brush, and come in here, and there we go. This is just a nice touch around here to help lighten the effect of that. We don't want that. We're just trying to see how that's affecting there. It's just lightening the effect of that. The thing you want to be watchful about is you don't want to make things look too uniform, and you don't want to go too far and create hot spots in your image. So you're just trying to bring everything closer into alignment for that. So that's how the burning and dodging is done. In this particular one that I did a few years ago, I used the hue saturation thing for this, but this is what effect these things were making. This is the dodge, and this is the burn. And it's amazing the more you master the burning and dodging techniques, it's amazing how much of the skin you can clean up with just doing this. You don't really have to make it look perfect. You're just trying to make it look like a smoother surface for that. The theoretical strength with this technique is that you're going to preserve the texture of the skin a little bit better. I think part of that is because you tend to be a lot more careful in the way you're applying this. You're trying to be really precise. Like in this area here, if I wanted to dodge this part out, I go to my dodge tool, my dodge layer, put a really low, small thing. I'm going to try to just precisely hit this area because that's just the area that needs to be lightened. For that, if I were using the clone tool, I might be tempted to use a larger clone tool to clean this up, whole area up here, and that's where you're going to start mushing texture out and blending things too much, whatever. So I think maybe that's why burning and dodging tends to work better. But the more you see, the more you get used to working with this particular kind of technique, burning and dodging, the more it tends to speak to you, and you find that there's a whole lot of power in what you can do to clean things up and make the skin look more uniform and clean. I have an image here. Come on, switch over. Bad skin. Here's a more extreme example for this. This girl here had a lot of acne. This is also an example from the book. This poor girl here had a lot of acne for that. So the workflow for this was go through with the healing, spot healing, and clone tools to clean up as much of that as you can, but then go through with burn and dodge. And this here is just dodging stuff. And we went from this to this with just burning and dodging. And we preserved so much more of the skin texture in this area here because we're not trying to clone or whatever, or heel stamp, heel brush this area here. So we're just affecting the surface of it, trying to smooth out the surface of that. So that's what the power of burning and dodging can do. And the most common way that I work with that right now is with the 2 curve adjustment layers, one to darken and one to lighten. Where you grab it on the curve doesn't matter a whole lot because you tend to get this smooth thing. So it's just, the idea is just to go up a little bit and down a little bit for that. But that's how the working in burning and dodging works for that. I'm going to close these images here, and in our workflow example, there's one more example for this was going to show, and that's this one. This was done for TV show Guilt. As part of a set of gallery images for this, they had all these shots of the stars. So they had already set up the color correction layers, color correction look they wanted. So these layers here, these are all the ones they said, like, just use these, we've already set these. So this is not the way I would work on color adjusting skin, but it was what the client provided, so that's what I go with for this. But the work on here follows the same kind of technique that I've been talking about. We had our retouch layer. So this is getting rid of the big stuff, the things I'm pretty sure have to go. Things like a mole, that always becomes a big question mark for people. Somebody retouched out the mole in Robert De Niro's face one time on a movie poster, and nobody recognized it. So there are some aspects which are really part of the identity of the person, and then there are some aspects which really aren't complimenting the person and really aren't associated with their identity. So you want to be careful about how you balance it out. Everybody has a little bit different approach on that. My approach is to follow what the client wants for that, but whenever possible, I try to preserve those things and keep the nature of the person as intact as possible. So after going through and cleaning up this stuff with really the bad skin, I think what happens a lot with people who wear a lot of heavy makeup, if you're an actress or model like that, it tends to create more problems for your skin. So it's not that they would actually have that skin, but it's just fact of life, what we encounter for this. And then the line by the mouth. The line by the mouth here, this was done the same way I do the lines around the eyes and forehead. For this was just retouching it out and sliding the opacity down. And then there's a retouch too, where I went through and cleaned up a little more. Her eyebrows here need to be filled in a little bit. That's one of the things with beauty retouching is you want to make sure the eyebrows look uniform and clean and full. You don't want to look spotty. The hairline here, similar vein, just filled in some of the gaps along the hairline. I think the hairstyle was really nice. Pulls a lot of the hair back, so it looks like you got kind of these big gaps in the hair. Just trying to fill that out. And then it went to burning and dodging. This one I used that hue saturation adjustment layer. So there's our properties. There we go. Properties hiding over here. Here's our hue saturation layer. And then this is the curves layer for dodging. And this is just smoothing out and lightening up, like the areas under her eyes and stuff like that, lightening this up a lot and cleaning these things up. So that's the power of burning and dodging. There's an awful lot of skin work is done with this. And there are multiple ways of doing it. With the overlay layer filled with 50% gray or not filled with 50% gray, where you're painting light and dark colors in, or using, you could use, I suppose, levels layers. I've never seen anybody use the levels layer for it, but you could. Most commonly, I see people using curve layers for this. And then they had their color correction layers for this. You see here, I have a noise layer for this. That's one of the things that comes from working in movie poster stuff over the years. And I find more and more applying a grain layer on top of your work serves a lot of purposes. Maybe it comes from somebody who grew up looking at film images and had an inherent grain so much. And maybe that's colors my aesthetic for it. But adding just a little bit of noise really seems to help the image in a couple of ways. One is it tends to give you a little more apparent sharpness. I think it's because if you have small little grain dots that are sharp, your eye fixes on that and then, okay, there's detail to see, it must be sharp. The other thing that happens is if some of your retouching work had lost some of the texture, like in here, I see it's not a perfect texture, right? In here, I see some of that retouch. I think it's part of the retouch 2 work. May not have been perfect texture in that area for that. So if you have some of that, having a grain layer tends to hide some of that work where the texture doesn't match up quite perfectly. It works in a number of ways. The most common way to add grain would be to make a new layer. I'm going to come here and make a new layer. Oh, I'm going to hold down the Option key so I bring up the dialog box. We're going to make a new layer. We're going to call it Demo Grain. There's my bad spelling again. And we're going to set this to overlay blending. And we're going to fill it 50% gray. Now again, 50% gray is invisible, so nothing shows up. So this is what we've got. When we turn on with everything else, nothing shows up. Now we go to filter, and we're going to say noise, add noise. And this is where you get the aesthetic choices about this stuff. Most people use Gaussian distribution. That's going to give you a more random looking kind of result. You get a choice of monochromatic or colored noise. For skin, I tend to use monochromatic, but I know friends who don't like the look of monochromatic noise a lot. So they'll use the colored noise and desaturate that layer by it. But let's just go with monochromatic for now because that just simplifies the explanation. And now you're just setting the amount for what you think is going to look appropriate. For the demo here, obviously this is going to be way too heavy. And if we come all the way down here to like, this, you're hardly going to see anything. So for the demo, I tend to go kind of stronger. In the days when we were shooting 35 millimeter, 2 1/4, 4x5 film, and scanning that, you would go with typical noise amounts would be like 8, 10, maybe 12%. Now with digital captured images, it can be really a lot lighter. A lot of times it's just like 2% noise for this. But for this case, for the demo thing, let's go a little bit stronger. Let's make it 8% just so you see the difference when I turn it on and off. And you see the areas here where we had lost some of that texture. Now with that noise layer, it's kind of covering up those sins a little bit and making everything look a little more uniform. She looks a little bit sharper when we have this on for that. So adding noise is one of the finishing techniques that we'll do a lot for this thing. So that's what this layer is. It's kind of a fancy way of doing it. I say voice patterns applied as a pattern. But the other thing you notice here is I have a layer here called frequency separation. We have just about a half hour left. I was going to get into color correction and stuff like that, but frequency separation is so much in the talk these days. I want to talk about some different uses for frequency separation and see if we can get that covered in about a half hour. Are you guys good for that? You guys good for a little talk about frequency separation here?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to assume that you guys are, because I can't see nodding heads since we're online, and I'm used to doing this in person for this. So the issue I had here with this was, after doing all this retouching work on this and preserving the skin texture, one of the things that's an anomaly is, and again, it's entirely client-driven. With the way the lighting went and these particular subjects, one of the comments the clients had was, her skin texture really jumps out a lot. Like, you've got a lot of skin texture there. Is there any way we can kind of mute that down a little bit? Well, the typical way of doing that would be to, like, blur it and paint it in, but then, like, there's always sort of this mismatch with stuff. So I thought about that, and one of the things I came up with to do that was a variation on the frequency separation technique. So before we get into that variation, let's walk through what frequency separation is, just so you guys understand. So when working with skin, you have to be really, really careful when you're working with skin with frequency separation. It is really easy. I'm wondering, do I have any overdone examples? Yes, I have an overdone example here. Let's open up this image here and see if this winds up showing the issue. What happens a lot of the times is you get a disconnect. So this isn't exactly frequency separation, but it's something set up to be a good example of what happens when you run into it. Here's what the shot of the model looked like. And then here's after the frequency separation thing. They're like, wow, look, magic. We got rid of all this stuff on her skin. But there's a disconnect between the texture and the shape of her face. And somehow, as a human, we're reading this. There's something that looks weird. There's texture here, but it's not uniform. She's got some sharpness, but some blurriness. Something's really kind of off about that. As humans, we're really, really keyed into what looks natural in a human being. And when we vary from that, we start to, the back of people's minds, the subconscious starts to scream out quite a lot and say something's not quite right here. So you will see a lot of stuff on the web. This was a technique. I experimented with somebody on the web. So here's a quick way of getting beautiful results with smoothing out the skin and all that. You don't have to spend all the time retouching and all that stuff. And I play with the thing like, oh my God, this is a great example of what not to do. So this is a thing where you're combining blur and texture, and there's a disconnect between the blur and the texture, and something just looks really off about it. That's why you want to be really careful about doing this with skin. We wouldn't want to run into that issue with this lady. We just want to tone down the texture a little bit. So the way frequency separation is done is I go through and I do my basic retouching work first. Figure the more surgical and application I can use for frequency separation and use it just for the things I really need that for, the better. So in this case, I did my retouching stuff first, got that to where I liked it. Then I'm going to select these layers here. I'm going to make a copy of the layers, merge into a copy by holding Option key and doing Command E. That merges them into a layer. I'm going to need two copies for this. I'm going to need a low frequency and a high frequency one. So I'm going to make another copy of this. So I have my two copies here. I'm going to put them into a folder just so it's easy for me to tell. I'm going to call it Demo FS. And whoop. Turn everything back on. There we go. I'm just trying to open that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this Demo Low. It's important to name these layers, and I'll show you why. I'm going to call this Demo High. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to come here to our low layer. There are two schools of thought about how to do frequency separation. Basically, two primary things. One way is to base it off of Gaussian blur. That's the conventional thing to do. So you would use this layer. You come over here to Filter and do Blur, Gaussian blur, and you add just enough blur to smooth out the features you want to get. The goal is, with a low layer, you want to wind up with just the broad shapes and colors. You don't want to have any of the sharp detail on there. So For this purpose, let's just go a little heavy-handed for that, just so you see this. Like, this is an extreme example for this. The issue when you're using Gaussian blur, though, is when you get close to the edge of something between a highlight and a shadow, wherever you'd have a natural edge in the thing, that gets blurred out. So now when you come close to that and you're working on this stuff, you're going to have that blurred out edge to deal with, and you don't want to have problems with that. But this is the basic method. You use Gaussian blur, and then you come over here to high, click on your high layer. You're going to come over here to image, apply image, and now you're going to go, this is where you want to name your layers. You can see since I named my layer demo low, my low layer here is called demo low. I know the right one to use. That I don't have to worry where is all these. If these were layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then I'd really be in a world of trouble. So right here I can easily identify the layer I'm going to use. Then the next thing you want to do is make sure this is set for subtract. You have all these different powerful controls that you have in apply image. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to subtract. We're going to subtract the blurred layer from the non-blurred layer. The scale is set to strength, and I think you have a choice. Okay. Scale is all set to strength for this. So you wouldn't want to set the scale for 2. And the default thing for this might be 1, where it lines up with black. Since we want the most of the image to show up as gray, middle gray, which is 128 gray, we're going to put offset to be 128. So we choose the layer we're subtracting, which is a low layer. We say subtract. Scale is set for 2. Offset is set for 128. And I just say OK. I'm like, OK, great. We have this gray layer here. What do we do with this thing? We set the blending mode on this to linear light. And now that's using one of the blending modes to enhance the contrast. And if we've done this right, we click on this layer group, Demo FS, we turn it on and off, we will not see any difference. You see this? We turn this on and off, we don't see any difference at all. But if I turn off my high layer, we see our blurred layer. And if I turn off my blurred layer, we see the effect of what the sharpening does. Like, wow, that's really sharpening thing. This layer here looks very similar to what people use the high pass filter for. And it's a method of sharpening images. Although you rarely use linear light for the high pass sharpening for that. But these two layers come here together, form this. And this is where you can get in here, and here if you want to add some more blending, what we might do is add a layer in between. Let's call it smoothing. That's where you're going to use the brush tool. We're going to go very low flow for this, and you're going to sample and just brush. We can even have this turned on and go underneath. And we can just go in here, and with paint, we can rework things. You have to be really careful, though, because you see there, we can completely reshape the space. So you have to be really, really careful about how you do this. This is why I prefer to handle stuff. Like, I wouldn't really want to go in and do this a whole lot with frequency separation, because this was more easily handled with a dodge curve. So blending in these things with the dodge thing gave me more precision for this. So that's why I want to be really careful with this. But this is typically what the conventional burning and dodge or frequency separation is done. The problem you run into here is when you're coming over to here, close to here, if we start working up here, we start to run into issues sometimes where we're working on here. That comes up mostly with this part. This is where those strong definitions are happening. Here's in our demo thing. So if we go to retouch this area, we're going to turn off sample all layers. We're going to turn this to, we're just going to set the current. I'm going to show you this. If we come here, we start really kind of screwing that layer up. So we have to be really careful about how we get close to the edge for things, because we can cause a problem and you start losing some of the definition about what we're doing when we get close to edges here. Like here, we're coming here, and like all of a sudden now we're getting this, where I'm trying to bring this texture in, clean up that, I'm getting this smudgy kind of look here. That's why the blurred layer here is blending in our tones and blurring them out, blurring the lines out becomes a problem for that. So let's turn all this stuff on and let's show you the other method for doing this. Some friends of mine, Seth McCullough and Earth Oliver, have been talking a lot about this technique. They call this frequency separation 2.0 because it's a variation that's different from what's been taught. Some people have used this in the past as well, but it's a fairly different approach on how people work with it. So I want to show you what their approach is. So with this one, we're going to rename this Demo Low. And this one here, we're going to name this Demo High. And now here, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to make this a smart object. So we're going to go over here to Smart Objects and convert that layer to Smart Object. So it's our low layer, we convert it to a Smart Object. Now we're going to come to Filter, and that variation that they like to use on this is use the median filter for making your low layer. The thing you look for here is median filter is going to try to honor the lines in the image better than Gaussian blur. Like here, we get a nice sharp line here with the median filter, whereas with the Gaussian blur filter, we got this blurry line. Here we get a better definition between eyebrow and skin than we did with the Gaussian blur filter. So here we can set this to whatever we want in terms of this. I tend to set a little high for these demonstration purposes. But again, what I'm looking for here is how well it honors the border. If we go too high, it'll start to really kind of confuse the borders for these things. It's going to take some time to update the preview. There, now the border is looking a little kind of funky, so I don't want to go that strong with this. But if I go too low, then it's not pushing enough stuff up into the high layer for that. So let's just, for sake of the demo, say 13 works fine for this. The reason why they do it with a smart filter, with a smart object, is your first thing is what's setting the lines the way I want. And then if you need to, you can hit it again with the same filter. So you can hit median filter again, double up on that, and you're still honoring those lines, but you've increased the strength of your effect that way. You're forcing more things up into it. So it's just a sort of a way of tweaking that a little bit. So now we come over here to our demo high, and we're going to go to Image, Apply Image. And we've already got demo low selected. Good job. Subtract. Scale is 2, 128 offset. And then if I'm going to retouch on this layer, I like to make a copy of the layer. So I go Command J, make a copy, and I'm going to group it with this. I'm going to hold down the Option key and group it with this. And now I set the blending mode on this to linear light. The reason why I make a copy is if I retouch this one and I screw up somehow, I can erase it, I can copy the information from here and paste it into there, and it gives me a fallback. I'm always having a way of falling back and affecting my image with a little more precision and flexibility. Now, since I didn't use this in this particular thing, the goal was to reduce the texture on the skin because I'd already cleaned up the skin, and I used burning and dodging to smooth out a lot of the stuff, and they like that. They just wanted the texture of the skin knocked down a little bit. So for this, that is, if I could back off on the strength of this just a little bit, that would give me an ability to control that. So here's the variation on this sort of thing I did. Add a layer mask to this by clicking the layer mask icon. Come to the brush tool here. I'm going to set my flow to 100%. I want my foreground color to be black because I'm going to be painting black into the mask, which will hide what I'm doing. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to be brushing on her skin texture and changing the size of the brush and trying to get in here. The whole idea is trying to get up in these areas and leave stuff like the lips, the nose, all that stuff, the hair, everything like that, where I needed all that sharpness. I'm going to leave all that stuff alone. I'm going to just come in here and brush it here and try to smooth this part out. Okay, so great. Now we've got that overdone look that everybody hates, and it looks really like you got blurry skin matched up with sharp stuff that looks disconnected. Like, oh, but we've got a noise layer. Like, no, the noise layer is not going to help us with this thing. So this is obviously too strong. Here's the cool thing. You click on the layer mask here. You go to your properties panel. You have a density slider. This slides the density of your mask up or down. So here I can slide the opacity, the density of this mask down to about 30%. Let's type in 30% here just to make it easy. And look, we've gone from this to this. We're just lightening the texture on that skin down a little bit. And that's what was done in this layer here. So I turn this off. That's what was done here. Since I didn't do any retouching work on this thing, I didn't have to make copies of this, whatever. This thing here is set for 34%. But that's what the slider is doing. It's knocking the density there. So density at 0% would be fully in effect. Density at a higher level, like 80%, is a lot of it in effect. 34% was just a little bit of lightening of that skin texture. So I'm using a variation on frequency separation to knock down the skin texture here for this. So that's about as far as I ever go with frequency separation on skin. There was another image. This image here, where I use frequency separation to help rebuild part of her shoulder. This. So this one here, you see it's got all the standard workflow stuff I've been talking about for this. Let's show. So we had the basic retouch layer. This is the uncropped version of it. John meant to center her, so I had to crop it later. So this is the basic retouch layer, cleaning up stray hairs, trying to clean her shoulder, not being that successful at getting this stuff off of her shoulder that I wanted to get off of. And that's what I used the frequency separation for. This was rebuild the shoulder. And here, what I'm doing with this is I have my low layer. This was done, the low layer was done with the Gaussian blur. Should have used, this is before I thought about using medium blur after Ceph and Earth's guidance. So I used the Gaussian blur to make this layer. Then I did some more retouching on it. And then this is paint, just adding paint in here. So I carefully made a layer mask where I wanted to avoid getting into this hair thing, and I just used paint. And it's assembling shoulder paint and painting around here, and using the layer mask to control how that shows up in the right way. And then on the high, we zoom in here. Okay, after I did that, I was left with all this hair in the high. This was cloning out texture from the hair. This was cloning out the texture here. So it's just cloning that stuff out. And then I copied some of the texture from the skin over here and just brought in some more texture for that. Then I had to bring back the shape on there. So these are layers trying to add in some shape, where this is to darken the shoulder, this to add some shadow underneath the hair, this is some more adding shape back in, because when I painted I lost that. This was losing that extra hair, and this is painting in just enough stray hairs here to make a result. So if I come over here, back here to the history, and come back to we had said originally, that's what, come on. I should say, there we go. So that's what this whole, where'd it go? Oh, here we go. That's what this whole rebuild shoulder thing is doing. That's where I use the frequency separation, because I didn't have a clean shoulder to borrow from. This one cut off here, and all the shots of it, she was laying too far over and just out of camera on the camera left. So I didn't have a shoulder I could do, so I had to rebuild the shoulder somehow. So this enabled me step by step to paint in shoulder. That's about the only time I use frequency separation on skin, aside from the rare occasion like this for that. Most of the time when I'm using frequency separation, it will be on smoothing wrinkles on clothing. So while we're talking about that, let's go to this, and I'll show you how we do that for cleaning up wrinkles in clothing. And by the time we're done with that, it'll be about time to see if there are any last questions, and for Stephen to do his giveaway. Okay, so this is a image that was for a commercial job I had. The driver shot this. It's for the manufacturer of these pants. So it was a fashion image for this. So the work on this was going through and cleaning up the background, cleaning up the coat, retouching stuff on that, trying to work on these things, trying to clean stuff up as much as I could, going through and doing all this work. But in the end, when I got to this, like, okay, this looks really good, they said, we need the pants to look smooth and clean. They're not really, we don't have any wrinkles for this. Something like this, where there is this texture, leathery kind of texture and stuff, cleaning this out with cloning would be a real nightmare, because we have a highlight here, we have shadow here, we have different texture, and finding the right place to clone from would be a nightmare. Burning and dodging this would be really difficult to do with burning and dodging, because it's so extreme for this. This is where frequency separation comes in really, really handy. And now this particular one was done with the standard retouching frequency separation technique for that. So here we had our low layer, which was the Gaussian blur layer, then a retouch layer where I'm retouching out these things here. And this is just painting using a combination of the mostly using the brush tool, sampling, low flow, maybe low opacity, sampling, painting, sampling, painting, sampling, painting this out. And then we had the high, and once we painted out the most of the wrinkles here, okay, now we just have really neatly pressed creases for this. So then with this is where we go through and this is where it's carefully cloning, healing, and all that to work on this. So we can go from this to this really easily. So this is working on that, and then we had cleanup, where I'm going through and blending this stuff in. So the cleanup is cleaning out the extra bumps and stuff here. So when we zoom out and we see, let's make sure we turn all these layers back on. Gotta turn it on one by one sometimes. When you have a lot of layers, this becomes really kind of a pain when you're turning layers on and off. If we come here, we can see how this took me about 15 minutes of work for this. And coming back in now, I see there's always more things you can do. Like, okay, let's get in and carefully clone and extend and make sure all these lines match up and all that. For the purpose of this thing, this is a catalog thing, so they're going to be used about yay big. So for the client's budget, this was more than sufficient for that. We had the noise layer on there, and that got that through. So I use frequency separation a lot for cleaning out wrinkles and things in clothing. Recently had to work on posters for Deadpool. And on the Deadpool thing, the characters, Domino and Deadpool, both have these costumes, which are supposed to be rather skin tight. But since it's the end of the filming of the production, the costumes got stretched out a little bit, and nothing really fits skin tight. A lot of wrinkles and bagginess and stuff need to be retouched on them. And for cleaning up their costumes, especially for the Domino character, she had like skin tight leather costume. This technique made it so much faster and easier for this. I used the median noise thing for that, where you get sharper, cleaner lines for that. That was a lot better, but that made the process for cleaning up the costume so much faster and saved a lot of time on it. I was able to get a much better result for that. So those are ways we use the frequency separation. I know we've gone over this kind of quickly. I know it's going to be I know we're squeezed on time, and I know it's going to be a recording, so people can look at the recording and go back over and skip over that a lot of times. For that. Does anybody have a last question for me before something else they'd like to see covered? I always have a host of things I want to talk about but never get to. So anybody have one last question before we get into the wrap-up stuff Stephen needs to do?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes before we wrap up. So.
While we're waiting to see that, let's talk quickly about one other thing that is a question people frequently run into, and that's color correction. One of the things that I notice a lot with work on skin tone, where people are working on skin, is a lot of times due to makeup, due to various things, we find there are color issues with skin. Like for this particular model, after all the retouching work had been done, here where we had work cleaning up and all this stuff, after all the retouching work had been done on her, we ran into an issue where her face, because of the makeup, her face looked bluer than her shoulders. And also the yellow lipstick was supposed to match the yellow in her necklace and the yellow in the headband. So we had to do a lot of color adjustments to do this. So for this, it's a lot of careful masking. But here you can see I have a set of masks. I have 2 layers, my luminosity, my color curve layer for adjusting the shoulders. So the careful mask here was carefully masking out the necklace so it wasn't affecting the necklace for that.
What did you use? What did you use to do your masking? Did you use your selection tools, or did you just paint it in by hand?
For masking this, it was a combination of color range and selection tools, and then it wasn't working right with this. So it was a lot of, after I made that mask, zooming in and painting by hand to clean it up.
Okay.
It was very, very tedious.
Okay.
If we come over here to my channels palette, this is the mask I wound up making for this, and it was very tedious work. So what I did was, let's turn that off. What I did was start off with going to select color range and trying to pick the color of the necklace here. I'm starting off with that and trying to adjust that. Let's give a preview, quick mask. Yeah, so you see, really need to come in and finesse this mask a lot. For that. If I click all these little highlights here, then it gets too much. So I have to not select these highlights. You have to be really careful about how you balance this out. But it just gave me a starting point for this, and then I had to go in and paint the highlights out by hand and make sure the shadows and things were done correctly. So it took a lot of painstaking work to get a mask that looked like this.
Those things look like lemon heads.
I don't know what they were. I think just yellow beads or something like that.
Remember the lemon head candy?
So this thing, it took breaking it down area by area for this. So first thing I was approaching was the shoulders. So I made that mask for the shoulders. After making the one for the necklace, I selected the shoulders and then using, I think, skin color range and finessing from there. And then I subtracted out the necklace. So the mask on this, you can see is,
Right.
you know, the shadow underneath the chin needed something different. So
Right.
it's just affecting the shoulders.
And you've got now you've got a couple questions here. One says, for Seth Meyer has asked, how much time do you spend on average for a beauty shot? And then Walk It 93 has asked, how did you move the woman's hair part closer together in one of the pictures you showed earlier?
Okay, so to answer the two questions, the average time spent on a beauty retouch, it depends entirely. No two images are the same.
Right.
So much of it goes on what the client's looking for, what the usage is going to be, and then what the image itself needs.
Right.
For instance, this one here, where it needed all this color correction work, and some areas need to be sharpened and stuff like this. This took more time to go through and work on than, say, the shot of the model where the person was asking about this one. This shot here of the actress, this one took me maybe 2 or 3 hours of work on that. For that, because I was trying to be really detail-oriented and clean, but not go heavy-handed and all that. But this one here probably took 6 or 7 hours worth of work, maybe a little more, with carefully making this mask. Then there was a mask for the lips to adjust the lips.
Right.
You see each one of these things has a luminosity layer and a color curves layer. So it's just carefully masking out each area and blending that in. If I look now, I still think her face could be a little warmer, but the photographer didn't want the face to get that warm. So the photographer said, this is a good balance, let's stop there. And so I listened to the photographer for this. But, this one needed a lot more steps for this. So this probably took 6 or 8 hours, whereas this one probably took 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
For that. And then if the model looks really perfect, sometimes it's like, wow. Like I worked on a shot of Angelina Jolie, and she looked gorgeous. Like hour and a half, she was done.
But of course, she's Angelina Jolie.
To be done on that. So the lighting, the photography, how the depth of field works, how everything works for that. Every image is so unique for that. I brought this one up too because they asked about how we close the hair part. So this was really pretty simple for this one. It's basically using a patch for this. So you don't always get away with this one, but this one it worked out really well. So we on our base layer, and I'm on the lasso tool. I like to hold down the Option key when I do because it lets me go between the magnetic lasso tool and then just draw in like this. I like that option a lot. So I just made a selection like this, and then I use Command J to make a copy of that. We'll call it Demo Hair Part. And then we come over here to bring up, I'm moving a little too fast for people. So on here we go to Edit, Transform, Free Transform. And now we can slide this layer up, we can stretch this up. Sometimes I go to here, I use Warp, and warp it in. And the whole idea is I'm just trying to move this area up a little bit. Let's see if that works well. Okay, that's definitely covering that up. Now it looks really kind of funky. So this is where we use layer mask. So we're going to click on here to add a layer mask to it. Go to our brush tool. Make sure we're choosing black because black's going to hide. We're at 100% opacity. And now we're just blending in with the layer mask and trying to make the work we did invisible.
Very cool.
And so pretty quickly we're able to do that. And if we're not too radical with this move and careful enough, you can get away with it without looking too telltale. The whole thing you want to do is make sure you're not making the work look obvious. that. Like if you stretch it too far, all of a sudden you get really straight hair. Like this part here where it goes a little curve and then looks kind of straight bothers me a little.
Right.
I see a little bit of repeating pattern there. So this one, I was being more subtle. But that's basically how it was done. That's what you have to look out for.
Cool.
And if you have to move it up this far, and you get these things, you might go in and fix them. You might go in and like paint individual hairs on another layer to hide over what you did, or mask this part out a little better, or something like that. You might solve it by that, by painting black in your mask layer, like there.
Right. So
a lot of ways of solving it. And what you do depends a lot on the problems you run into along the way.
All right, so Walker93 says, wow, thank you. That's great. I think we're out of time, buddy.
Okay.
This is great job.
Quick recap. My website is dunbardigital.com.
Okay, you want to show them your website there? That's that it? Okay, dunbardigital.com.
Yeah, dunbardigital.com.
And you're welcome to type it in the box if you like too.
Okay.
So did you guys like the presentation? And I think what I like to do is do more of these. Now, the Photoshop users group, we used to meet over at the Art Institute of California. And but as everybody probably know, the Art Institutes have been closing up left and right all across the country. And they either closing them down completely or being bought out by another company, and as a result, we've lost our meeting space. So, we didn't have enough time to get a new meeting space this month, so we decided to take this on to Twitch. In some ways, there's a lot of benefits from it. You're welcome, Walk-It93. You're welcome, Superhero. You're absolutely welcome. You're welcome, Cynthiana. Cynthiana says it was great. Gloom KV says nice. Got a few tricks. Well, that's good. I'm glad that helped. Seth Meyer says great presentation. Dennis, thank you for taking the time. Absolutely, I think we all agree with Seth on that. Pearly Cream Cheese says
my website got bumped out. It didn't let me, so you'll have to type it in again. DunbarDigital.com.
Dunbar. Oh! You know what? That's what happened. I forgot to tell you. I had to give you a basically a permit. So I'll put it on there. So www.dunbardigital.com. All right, cool. So awesome. Cyberhan says thank you very much from WayDC. Let's see. Normal Nandora. Naomi Nandora. Sorry, it was a dark blue on black, so it's hard to read that one. I thought it was somebody new that came in there. But Naomi Nandora, welcome. Says thank you very much. I've never looked so good on a picture. Your tips are working already. Very good. Very good. So Mandala says, at Chromolution, that's me. The user got spam banned. Oh, I know. I figured it out. Okay, so I'll put it on there. Sorry about that. Ivy Wizard says, he says great. So this is fantastic. So let's do this. Dennis, I'm going to have you stop sharing your screen. I'm going to share my screen because we're going to do the giveaway, so everybody can see the whole process of how this works. So if you have not done so already, in order to be, so go to your the Adobe Connect in your taskbar. There we go. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Share. Great. That's right. There you go. All right. So we are going to do the giveaway. Let me actually bring this on over. You're going to see me. You're going to probably see this kind of loop in here. And I'm going to go over to our, there we go. All right. So now over here to the left, if everybody's watching this, is everybody who actually signed in. Now to be included in the drawing for Creative Cloud, you have to type in SDPUG. All right. So I'm going to type it in for you. So if you look to the left, these are the people that are in there. Ace Hoffman, Cyberhan, Cynthiana, Cynthia Anna, Dennis Dunbar is there, Essence is there, Floyd Peterson, Gloom KV, Naomi Nandora, Pearly Cream Cheese, Photo Retouch is there. Seth Meyers there, Soul Breeze is there. Okay, somebody else just popped in. Now we got 17. Surf Hero, not superhero. Surf Hero. I said superhero last time. Surf Hero, Wade C, Walk at 93, and Worm Cutter. I guess it is. Okay, somebody else just jumped in there. Now we have 18. There's 33 people here. It says showing in my window here, and we only have about 18 people who's entered into the engine. So Mandala is 19. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to give you guys another minute, and then we're going to do our rocking and rolling. We're going to give away a Creative Cloud license. Let's see who else. Somebody just typed in there. Well, it's still 19. So we missing anybody? So there's 33 people here. Okay, so somebody else just jumped in there. Now there's 20. There's a total of, let's see, what do I have on here total? I'm even going to pull this off here. We have a total of 32 people, it says now. Maybe more than that. And we have a total of 21 who just typed in SDPUG. So I'm going to assume that everybody else just doesn't need Creative Cloud license. All right, so what I'm going to do is so that's it. So this is your last chance, everybody. Whoever has not typed in SDPUG, here are my names right over here to the left hand side. Look and see if you're there. You should be able to see this. If your name is not there, that means you're not going to be included in the drawing. All right, 21 people has typed in there, so I'm going to assume the other 10 don't need Creative Cloud. Oh, and give you guys another heads up. We're going to have another stream tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And it's going to be focused on 3D. Okay? So 9 a.m., the same place. Just come right back here. Right back to Steve. Me. All right? Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., it'll be another 3-hour stream. But it will deal a lot with 3D. So definitely be here. Pearly Cream Cheese, we should see you there. We haven't seen you in the 3D streams in a while. What program? Lightwave. It's going to be Lightwave. You know, if you're going to do 3D, you gotta do something. You have to also include a professional package in there. But it's going to be a Lightwave and Photoshop, by the way. Okay. Let's see. Great. All right. So I guess we're ready to do our drawing. What? What's that frowny face for, Pearly Cream Cheese? What did I do now? Yeah. I think I told her she had to learn something like other than you can't just be stuck on one program if you're going to be a digital artist. I mean, I'm playing around with Photoshop, I'm playing around with After Effects, I play around with ZBrush, I play around with Lightwave. Now you gotta be multi-skilled here. So Dennis Dunbar says, I'd like to see some info on using 3D inside Photoshop. I always do 3D in Photoshop. Okay, fine. Maybe the next meeting we'll do a Photoshop in 3D. But I mean, is anybody out there? I mean, the 3D is getting a lot of interest now in Photoshop. It's really improved. Pearly Kimchi says, "Hey, I'm an old girl." No, I don't want to hear it. We will have none of that type of talk. Most of my students in my professional classes are like your age and older, learning new stuff. So you have no excuse. Yeah, I don't want to hear it. And we won't even say how old Dennis is. I mean, he well, we won't go there. Okay, so, let's see. You said, I have used 3D inside Photoshop. That's right. Yeah, 3D in Photoshop is pretty cool, but it's not as fast as a dedicated 3D program. If you get a dedicated 3D program, I use Lightwave. It's one of the most least expensive programs and most comprehensive programs in the industry. You don't have to buy a renderer. It's all built in. The animation, the renderer, the effects, compositing's all built into Lightwave already. And it's about what, 800 and something bucks? You know, 800 something bucks to 900 bucks. I mean, most 3D programs start at 1,500 on up. All right. Anyways, Pearly Cream Cheese says. Actually, well, hold on a minute. So Wady C says, I fell back on 3D Max, but it worked okay in a pinch. So, who's this? Now, this person here says, Keverific says, you're a wonderful human being. But of course, we all are wonderful human beings, I hope. So Wady C says that they used 3D inside of Photoshop. Yeah, 3D in Photoshop is really improved, and it works well with anything that you create in a third-party program. So whatever I create in ZBrush, whatever I create in Maya or Lightwave, I can bring inside of Photoshop 3D engine, spin it around, turn it around, and use it to build my concept art scene. I mean, it's an exciting time to be an artist right now. Let's see. Pearly Cream Cheese says, isn't it great, Wady C? I'm a graphic designer and it's all I need. Lightwave is more. You know what? Hold on a minute. I'm gonna correct you on that. A lot of designers are getting clients who are getting their products not molded and shot by not put into a mold and then built, a prototype built to be shot by a photographer. They're not doing that anymore. They're actually paying somebody to build a 3D model inside a 3D program, giving it to them as an OBJ, and then they give it to you, the designer, to bring in Photoshop to put into a brochure and to texture it and make it look real. So that's the workflow now. Sorry. Blender is free. That's right. So Essence, excellent comment. Very good thinking. Blender is a full-featured program and it's free. Pearly Cream Cheese. It doesn't matter. I mean, whatever you learn in one program, you're going to apply it to another. So sometimes I'll learn how to do something in ZBrush and realize, oh, so that's how I should be thinking in Lightwave. Right? They can work together in terms of an educational experience. All right, so you pay her to say that. Oh, no, we don't. Don't have the money to pay anybody. I was born a poor black child. Okay. So, Montala says, at Dennis Dunbar, do you see any potential in using 3D in your work?
I do occasionally. What I learned is to really get to a high end in 3D takes a long time of building up your skill level, and I figured before I could offer a really high-end result in 3D, it would take me a very long time to learn. And I was busy enough with the retouching work I do now without doing that. But I have worked with 3D artists on stuff, and that's a lot of fun. The thing I'm interested in, like I posted about 3D in Photoshop, is it would be interesting to learn how to start using some of it in Photoshop. Yeah. And then maybe start getting a handle on how I would approach it, and then maybe see how I could use it in a commercial way to really start, offer a service to clients. But for right now, I haven't been offering that myself.
So keep in mind that I'm on my Twitch channel here. Make sure you follow me on the Twitch channel so you're notified of my presentations. I'm constantly doing 3D and Photoshop compositing, Photoshop digital painting. I'm constantly doing something having to do with digital art from a variety of approaches. So follow me now if you haven't done so on Twitch, and then and you'll be notified when I'm on. So let's see. We've got. Someone's talking about SketchUp. SketchUp is a fun one. It's for beginners and entry level. It's not a full featured professional package, but it's a fun one to kind of get into 3D and learn to play with it a little bit. Export your objects to bring into Photoshop. You can get to learn your workflow in terms of bringing in objects from a third-party program into Photoshop. That's a good one to play, and that one's free too. Like I said, Blender is free, and it's a much more of a professional package. So I would, and of course it takes time, and he's right in that, Dennis is right in that 3D has a learning curve. So get a jump on it. Start learning this stuff. Go on to YouTube. Go on to lynda.com. I think that lynda.com has Blender tutorials. So definitely check those out. Get involved with it. Playing a tiny violin, IB Wizard. So, okay. So, Wade C says, I'm not a fan of Blender though. It's difficult enough to learn the tools, but with the interface changing with functions, it's like trying to walk through Jello. Well, Blender interface is not all that intuitive, but neither is ZBrush. And ZBrush is industry standard. IB Wizard says, lots of 3D programs, and Lightwave is good at buildings, tables, and the like. Lightwave is great for character animation. It says soft body, hard body dynamics, particle effects, compositing, animation, bones. It's full featured. Okay, and a rendering, one of the best rendering engines in industry. You don't have to purchase a third-party rendering engine package like Octane. It's already built into Lightwave. It's done. For the 800 and something bucks, you're done. And if you're a student, Lightwave costs $125. So if you're a student or going to school, you can get Lightwave for $125. Just saying. All right. So Mandala says he loves SketchUp. I guess Dennis, Wadey C is asking, do you do restoration?
No, I was just typing a response.
Okay.
I don't do photo restoration, but one of the co-authors for the book I was working on, Wayne Palmer, he's out of Pennsylvania. He does a great job. He's an expert on photo restoration. So on the book, most of the photo restoration chapters, Wayne took over and handled that part.
Okay. All right. So Mandala says SketchUp is a $600 plus package. Oh, so they've got. I thought SketchUp was free. So I guess they have a professional version. Version. I can't even talk today. The professional version. So if you're gonna spend $600 for SketchUp, you're gonna save that $200 extra, save that money, and buy a Lightwave. Okay, Lightwave's a program that it was industry standard before Maya came along. It's the one that was used to do all the Star Trek movies, Babylon 5, Titanic, and it's part of the industry to this day. So if it's going to be $600 or more for a package, save your money, get the extra $200 and buy Lightwave. That's just a no-brainer. Let's see. So Mandala. Okay, so Mandala says it is not what you would use for rendering, rigging, animation. I guess he's talking about SketchUp. But many professional architects, yeah, SketchUp is good for architects because it's very much like CAD. It's like AutoCAD. So there's a lot of compatibility with AutoCAD. All right, so Denise, that's Den. I'm sorry, Denise. I mean this. Okay, Wade was actually Dennis was responding to Wade. Okay, so most programs have a student-teacher version. Yes, they do. Very good. IB Wizard. Walker93 says lots of architects use SketchUp. That's true because it's much more closer to CAD. And Wadey C says the pro version may not be necessarily for many instances. Other programs other programs can take from SketchUp. So learning other tools, like Steven says, is key. That's right. You have to be, multifaceted in terms of your skill sets. In today's world, you can't be stuck in one program anymore. You can't just be Photoshop. You can't just be Illustrator. You have to diversify your talents. You have to have some experience with After Effects, some experience with Photoshop, Illustrator, some 3D package, text stream package like a ZBrush, or maybe some sculpting tool like a ZBrush. You got to have a little bit and like I said, multifaceted in terms of your skill sets. So, Wadey C says, I like SketchUp because it's like playing with clay or Legos. Yeah, it is. It's like playing with Legos. All right, shall we do our drawing? Let's do a drawing. All right, so we've got 21 people in here so far. And I assumed everybody typed in SDPUG into the chat box so they can be entered into the drawing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm gonna, let's see it. I'm gonna click. What am I gonna click here? All right, so we're gonna click the roll button right there. You see the highlight green? That's gonna be the roll button. All right, so here we go. Whoever gets this, let's cross your fingers. 1 year subscription to Creative Cloud license. If you win it, you just simply add it to your current subscription to Creative Cloud, or if you don't have it, you just register. You'll get an email on it. So whoever wins this, before I start the roll, type in your, let's see, I need to get your email address. So instead of putting the @ symbol, put the AT, and then that way you won't be banned by Nightbot, okay? So I just need your email address, and matter of fact, I'm going to type my email address in here so you can send it to me directly in addition. So it's Steve at chromeillusion.com. I just typed it in. Okay. Okay, here we go. And let's roll it. And who's going to get it? Oh my gosh, Gloom KV, one of my regulars. Oh man, congratulations. Congratulations. So, Gloom KV, there's my email address there. Send me your direct email address. And we're going to do another drawing for tomorrow's Lightwave users group. Okay? So, join in on that and you have another chance to win Creative Cloud. So, I'm going to type in my email address here in the chat box again. And Gloom TV, there you go. Let me see if I should be able to type directly on your name. And I can follow you. So, I'm going to follow you, add you as a friend, and I can whisper to you. Can I chat to you? I can chat. Send one reasons. Oh no, that's something different. I want to whisper. That's right. I don't want to bet. I'm gonna mess it up again. So Gloom TV, I think it was whisper. Is that what that is? Whisper. I guess that's just I don't know what that is. All right, you've got my email address. Send me your email address, Gloom KV, and I'll send you the details for the Creative Cloud license. Thank you for being here, everybody. This is great. So tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, we're going to have another presentation here at Digital Creativity with Stephen Burns, a.k.a. Chrome Illusion. Dennis Dunbar was excellent. Thank you, Dennis. You were wonderful. I think everybody, the response to getting here, that they really enjoyed your presentation. We get a wide range of experiences here, from advanced all the way down to beginner. So hopefully there was something a little bit here for everybody. Let's see. Wait, 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That's right, 9 a.m. tomorrow, Sunday, Pacific Daylight Time. Not 10, not 11, 9 a.m. PST or PDT if you prefer. We're past PST now. Now we're in PDT. All right, so see you tomorrow, Essence. She'll be here, and I know Gloom will be here. And others, Mandala, I think, should be here, and also Ivy Wizard should be here. Everybody should be here. If you want to see, just how powerful Lightwave is, and come and check it out tomorrow. And even if it's a little bit over your head, or you feel it's over your head, it's being recorded. Okay, so just kind of come in, soak it in, ask questions, all that stuff. All right, so Wadey says that will be noon for them, and because we get a lot of people from Europe on that site as well, so you get to network with some other possibilities. Okay, so for those of you who are here from the Photoshop users group that normally meets at the Art Institute, I'm curious to see how you felt about today's workflow and presentation. Did you like it better than actually meeting in person? There's always advantages of meeting in person, but the advantage of this is that we get all our meetings recorded, and there's some interaction. Now, it's not interaction like we do in person, but I'm curious. Now, when we get a new space, what I'm going to try to do is also Twitch stream the presentation at the space we're meeting at. So that's the goal. So as soon as I hear from my contacts, we can get that set up. All right, so I guess we're done here. Thank you, everybody. Let's. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording, and then